Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, welcome back to Backyard Buckets. Today, we're going to be talking about the James Harden trade. Because I made a Houston Rockets video a couple days ago, well, probably about a week ago by the time you see this, and every single comment was about the comment I made about James Harden, the trade, and them losing the trade. So we're going to be looking at that today, looking at 4 other recent NBA superstars being traded, and kind of grade the Harden trade based off that. Before we get started, make sure to like and subscribe button if you do enjoy today's video. It took me a while to make. Also leave a comment. All 3 things really help us out in the YouTube algorithm. And with that being said, let's go ahead and get started. So the 4 superstars, well, basically superstars that we're going to be looking at today are Kawhi Leonard, Anthony Davis, Russell Westbrook, his trade to LA, and then the Chris Paul trade to Houston, because that was, a pretty big haul for Houston. So we're going to be looking at those 4 trades, and then finally going back to the Harden trade and looking at it again. Make sure you stick around for the whole video. Starting off with the Kawhi trade. Everybody really knows what Kawhi did when he went to Toronto. He was there 1 year, and they won a championship. One of the better playoff runs that we've seen recently by one player, beating Giannis and company, beating the Warriors, although it was a very injured Warriors team. But the Spurs got pretty good compensation for Kawhi. Not great. It's probably the second best on this list, but they got DeMar DeRozan back, a guy who was their star for roughly 3 years. Now he's on Chicago, of course, but he was a good player for him. They also get back Jakob Poeltl. He's still on the roster, still relatively young. Hadn't really panned out in the way that I think San Antonio wanted him to, but he's still a good backup piece. Maybe he could work his way into the starting lineup this year. But probably the biggest piece that they get out of this in the long run is going to be Keldon Johnson, because if you did not know, they also traded the 28th pick. Toronto did, and Keldon Johnson ended up being the 28th pick. He's going to be a pretty good player for the Spurs for a while. He's only 21, and he's already contributing at a pretty good level. Now, we're going to be looking at the Anthony Davis trade. Of course, Anthony Davis forcing his way out of LA, or not out of LA, out of New Orleans, to go to LA. LeBron ultimately pulling the trigger there, and Anthony Davis went out and he won a trade, or he won a championship, not the trade. He won a championship the next year, but looking at what the Pelicans got out of Anthony Davis, first off, Lonzo Ball, who is no longer with the team. It was apparent that they weren't going to be able to keep all 3 of these guys, as well as Zion, on the roster for long term. So Lonzo was the one that ended up leaving, although I think they should have kept Lonzo over Brandon Ingram, who they just signed to a massive extension. Not really sure how Brandon Ingram and Zion fit together in the long term. It's not the best. Their play styles have already shown that they don't fit together too well. And then Josh Hart, who at the time of this recording is still a free agent, I'm pretty sure. He's one of the better rebounding guards. Good piece, good young piece, bench piece that would work well in almost any team in the NBA. So I'm not sure why he's still a free agent. Maybe he's asking for a little bit too much money. And then DeAndre Hunter actually ended up being the number 4 overall pick, which the Lakers traded in this trade. And I think the Pelicans should have hung on to DeAndre Hunter. While they did end up trading the 4th pick for 8 and I believe 17, which ended up being Nickeil Alexander-Walker, it didn't end up the greatest for him. Jackson Hayes hadn't really panned out, and you saw DeAndre Hunter's already contributing on a conference finals team. However, he was hurt, but he was arguably the 3rd best player on that team, maybe 2nd. And then Nickeil Alexander-Walker, who played pretty good last year, averaged about 11 and 5, and it's looking like he's going to be a good piece for him on down the line. So they end up getting Ingram and Alexander-Walker for sure, maybe some contributions out of Jackson Hayes. Maybe they bring back Josh Hart. And they also get an unprotected pick swap in 2023, LA's unprotected first in 2024, and another unprotected pick swap in 2025. All 3 of those picks are looking like very, very good assets right now with the Lakers' age issues. Chris Paul to Houston is the next one we're going to be talking about. And Chris Paul, this was the second time he got traded in his career. Obviously the first going from New Orleans to LA, now going from LA to Houston, and in exchange the Clippers get back, Patrick Beverley, who is no longer on the team, now plays for the Timberwolves, but he was a good piece for the Clippers for the last 5 years or so. Montrezl Harrell, who is now on the Wizards. I feel like the Clippers really messed this one up. Big time. Because none of the three guys are on the team anymore. However, there were good contributions by these guys. Down the line, none of them really contributed to conference finals run. I mean, Patrick Beverley a little bit. He broke Devin Booker's nose. That's about it. Lou Will is now in Atlanta. He was a good sixth man for him. And then Jerome Robinson. I didn't know if they got the 12th pick or the 13th pick in that trade. I don't think it was either. But I just went with the 12th pick. Which ended up being Jerome Robinson, or the 13th pick, which ended up being Jerome Robinson. It could have been Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, I'm not sure. If you do know, let me know down in the comments below. I spent like 10 minutes looking for that. Couldn't figure it out. Now we're going to be talking about the Russell Westbrook trade to LA. Westbrook has been traded quite a bit the past few years. Going from OKC to Houston to Washington to now LA. But the Wizards, in return, get Montrezl Harrell, who we just talked about. He was involved in the last trade. They get him. Now, Westbrook is probably the worst of the four players that we're talking about in this video, at least at the time of being traded. Kentavious Caldwell-Pope, who is a pretty good wing. He's relatively young. Not that young anymore, though. Kind of the centerpiece, I feel like, of this trade was Kyle Kuzma, who goes over to Washington looking for a fresh start. We've seen how good he can be on a rebuilding Lakers team when he was the guy. And so hopefully he'll be that for Washington. He is going to be second in command to Bradley Beal, but still he will have a pretty significant role. And then they also got the 22nd pick, which was Isaiah Jackson, that they traded to Indiana for Isaiah Todd and Aaron Holiday. I feel like they probably should have just held on to Isaiah Jackson there. But you never know. Isaiah Todd was one of my bigger sleepers in this year's draft. He's already been playing pro basketball for a year. Maybe he can turn into a good four-man for the Wizards on down the line. Don't see him ever being a 5 in the NBA, but decent forward. So now, back to the James Harden trade. And looking at it, the Nets obviously get James Harden and a 2024 second-round pick. They give away Jared Allen, Taurean Prince, some 2017 57th overall pick guy, Karis LeVert, Kurucs, and then 8 first-round picks, 4 being swaps, 4 being picks. And then the Rockets get Karis LeVert, Kurucs, all those picks. And, they ended up sending Karis LeVert and Jared Allen elsewhere to get back Victor Oladipo, who they, in return, sent to Miami. However, some of the hidden kind of things about this trade. This trade allows the Rockets to sign Kevin Porter Jr. This trade also allows the Rockets to be horrible. We'll talk about what that means in a second here. But Kevin Porter Jr. is one of the better young shooting guards in the NBA. At only 21 years old, he can fill it up. Averaged about 17 last year in limited playing time. The Rockets also ended up being horrible, so they get Jalen Green with the second overall pick. That's kind of a hidden bonus of this trade. And, I mean, Jalen Green is going to be a superstar. I'm almost 100% sure of it, barring injuries. He can score whenever, however, wherever he'd like. I feel like he's going to be a superstar. They also get Josh Christopher out of this trade with one of their picks this year. And, I mean, I don't know. It's probably the third best trade ahead of CP3 and Westbrook, but behind Anthony Davis and Kawhi in terms of return. Although you could argue it's second. So I feel like they actually did a pretty good job. Looking back on this trade now, with it compared to other NBA trades, I'd say the Rockets did a fairly good job. Of course, you can't completely judge it until 10 or 15 years down the line once all those picks have been used. But with that being said, that is going to be it for today's video. Please make sure to like button and the subscribe button if you enjoyed today's video at any point. Also, please make sure to leave a comment. It really helps us out in the YouTube algorithm. Also, make sure you're subscribed, because if we hit 2,000 subs by Thanksgiving, we will be doing a giveaway of some sort. So all you have to do to be entered into that giveaway is subscribe. And with that being said, thank you so much for watching today's video.